Peace and love. Abibi Fahodie. How is everyone doing tonight? Thank you for joining us once again on another session of Resurgence of the African Mind Book Club. As you all know, we are reading, excuse me, The Blueprint for Black Power by Baba Amos Wilson. Excuse me, family, my throat is itchy. This week, we combine. Just join the first time. You can catch the links on Dr. Maat's page, Deanna Bailey on Facebook, or you can go to www.lililapoetespeaks.com, and you can also find the links to join the panel, or you can join the chat if you would rather do that. My name is Alima La Poete, aka Alima Njai. I am the author of Perceptions of a Misplaced African, Volume 1, available now on Amazon and on Kindle. And we're going to take this time right now and let the panel introduce themselves.
Peace, blessings. I'm Camille Gaynor-Jones. I'm a drummer, producer, teacher, and authoring 2 books right now. And it's an honor to be here with the family. And yeah, let's get it cracking. Get our people out of this condition.
Absolutely.
Brother Travis from Detroit. I'm an IT professional. This program we have going with Blueprint for Black Power is going to transform minds. Just ready to get started. Hotel.
Hotep.
Hotep. Hotep.
Peace, this is Brother Knowledge Born Alive from Do Knowledge Radio, host and founder. Definitely honored and privileged to be here again with the Resurgence of the African Mind Book Club. So, you know, let's get it cracking. Honored to be here.
I'd like to say peace and power to the panel. Peace and power to all of the viewers, and peace to the folks that will be listening to in the archives. My name is Dr. Deanna Bailey, also known as Dr. Maat. I am a lecturer at the School of Engineering at Morgan State University. I'm also the co-founder of Ed Anime Productions, executive producer of the Mel Trek series, and also the co-founder of Higher Minds Academy, which is an African-centered academy, Saturday academy, that will be opening in Baltimore on October the 7th. I'm happy to be here, and I'm with the panel. I'm ready to get started, Sister Alima. The chapters that we read, chapter 4 and 5, I mean, they were absolutely amazing. They talk about consciousness and power, self-concept and power. And so a lot of us, we say that we're conscious, Sister Alima, but you know, after we go through chapter 4, I want to know, are we really conscious? Are we really conscious? We want to be conscious. But are we really conscious according to what Baba Amos Wilson, according to the definition of consciousness given by Dr. Amos Wilson? So we're going to find out, and that's going to come out during the discussion in chapter 4. And so I'm ready to get started. But before we do get started, I do want to say that I have 7 more copies of Blueprint for Black Power available. These copies were signed by Brother Sababu, who is Dr. Amos Wilson's former business partner and also the editor and publisher of many of his books. So Blueprint for Black Power was actually published posthumously 3 years after Baba Amos Wilson transitioned, and it was Sababu who made that happen. So I have 7 more copies of autographed copies of Blueprint for Black Power for sale. Contact me at dr.maat.msu@gmail.com, or just hit me on Facebook, inbox me, Deanna Bailey, if you're interested in purchasing a copy. We're selling them for $43. If you go on Amazon, this book is going for $55 on Amazon, and we're offering autographed copies for $43. We're getting them for $40, and we're charging $3 for shipping. So we're not making money off of this. We just want to make sure that you have the information. That's what's important to Sister Alima and myself. So go ahead, sis. You can go ahead and lead the conversation or start the conversation.
Okay, family. As Sister Maat let you know, we are on chapter 4. Chapter 4 is entitled Consciousness and Power. In this chapter, we learned a lot about consciousness. We learned about consciousness via social control. We learned about functions and elements of consciousness. And we also learned about group consciousness as well as values. We're going to kick it off with the definition here that was given to us by Baba Wilson on page 85. The state of being conscious refers to the attainment and maintenance of a level of physiological and psychological arousal or alertness, which permits, the conscious beings to be aware of, to remember, to recall both past and contemporary, internal and external events, to willfully and selectively attend to some stimuli rather than others, to deliberately choose and execute an action in response to environmental and personal goals. The state of being conscious essentially refers to a state of wakefulness or knowingness. The state of being conscious enables the conscious being to amazingly and deliberately behave in certain ways for whatever reasons. So I thought that was good that he started us off with a good, powerful definition and what it really means. And in essence, to be conscious, it does mean to be awake, but it enacts certain behaviors within an individual.
Absolutely.
So I thought, to me, that was the key within consciousness, was that it enacts certain behaviors, because anyone can be conscious to a sense that you are aware, but you must be aware and your actions must show that you are aware, so to speak. So that shows us that some people that say they're conscious, of course they're not, because their actions don't mirror their level of consciousness that they say they have attained.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely. And I love how on this page, Sister Alima, that he conveys that there are different states of consciousness, different degrees, different levels of consciousness. He says varying degrees of awareness. And based on, like you said, Sister Alima, based on the behavior that we see, or the behavior that you exhibit, one can tell the state of consciousness or the level of consciousness that you possess, just based on your behavior. And I would argue that many of us who believe that we are in, I guess, on a high level of consciousness really aren't. If you look at our behavior, we're really still at a lower state or a lower degree of awareness. If you gauge that level based on the behavior that we exhibit.
I totally agree, Sister Maya. And a lot of people who can regurgitate a lot of information think that because they regurgitate that information and then they tell you what that is, that qualifies them as conscious. I totally agree.
Exactly. Yet their behaviors show you nothing of what it is that they can mimic.
Yes, I totally agree.
So consciousness, like you said, is not simply being aware, it's action.
That's right.
Action, your awareness. And that goes into the next page, page 86, when he talks about, and I'm probably skipping ahead, but I know that later on in the chapter, he's going to talk about consciousness as a force of intelligence, because to be intelligent means that you apply the knowledge that you possess, right? So if I'm conscious, then that means I apply what I know. So consciousness is about action. So just like Brother Travis said, many of us think that because we can rattle off facts or information, that means that we are conscious. But we have to add action behind that knowledge, or else you can't say that you're fully conscious. So
and I totally agree. But the thing is that it is degrees, like you said, Sister Maya, and the panel was saying, because when I first got knowledge of self, I didn't act out all the things that the people were telling me, but as I continued to, and I'm still growing, you know what I mean? I haven't arrived, and I would say it's degrees of consciousness. I'm constantly growing, constantly being exposed to certain things that might be individualism and destructive to self and the community, and rectifying those things. So it is degrees to it also.
That's right.
Absolutely. So he goes on to say that consciousness, it acts as a force. This is at the top of page 86. He said it acts as a force. So while he describes different states of consciousness, he talks about wakefulness. He said that is a state of consciousness which facilitates certain types and forms of self-determined mental and physical behavior not possible during sleep as a state of consciousness, or vice versa, right? So he's saying that consciousness, it acts as a force which either expands or contracts behavioral possibilities. Hence, consciousness is a form of power. So he says, what type of power, how much power it exhibits depends on its level, organization, and functional state.
Yes. Wow.
That's right.
Let me highlight that.
Yes. He goes on to say wakeful consciousness is an active, goal-oriented, all-inclusive psychophysiological state of being. It includes the operational influence of conscious and unconscious processes, as well as the behavioral repertoire and possibilities which can influence the mental and physical behavior of the conscious individual.
Mhm.
He goes on later, next paragraph, to possess consciousness is to be possessed by consciousness, for consciousness takes over and represents itself in the body as feelings, emotions, tastes, values, intelligence, and behavior.
So I just want to point out on this page that it's a force. So he describes consciousness as a force. Then he says that consciousness is an attitude, right?
Yes.
Yeah, he goes on to say, and he's quoting from Berdui. He's saying that, and I'm down here on, I'm still on page 86 at the bottom.
Bordeaux.
He says the body is the site of incorporated history, because he's going to go on to say that consciousness, he said, is a bodily hexix.
Yes.
So here he's kind of prepping us for that. So he says that the body is the site of incorporated history. The practical schemes through which the body is organized are a product of history, and at the same time, the source of practices and perceptions which reproduce that history. So it's actually history, Sister Alima, you know, that also shapes and forms our consciousness.
Yes, it does.
Now I understand. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Brother Travis.
Now I'm understanding. I'm getting to understand what he meant in a lecture that I heard. That he talks about how consciousness even adjusts you biologically. He says is that how, you know, us practicing the slave culture mentally and spiritually, how it even adjusted us, you know, physically. When he says that when you began to function in your consciousness, you like you talked about, Dr. Oye, that force, it begins to even alter you, like he said in the lecture, physically. Knowledge.
Absolutely, because you're going to behave differently.
Yes.
You know, you're going to behave differently. You're going to eat differently. You know what I mean? Your whole aura will be different, like you say, when you walk in that consciousness. So he's got consciousness as a bodily hexix. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. Hexis. So it's a bodily hexis. So like Sister Alima said, to possess consciousness is to be possessed by consciousness.
That's right. It makes sense.
And it represents itself in the body as feelings, emotions, like she said, taste, values, intelligence, behavior. So it's a bodily hexix. He goes on to explain that on page 87. And so I love how, you know, and this is just, he's just reinforcing some of the stuff that he's already said in the previous pages. He said, what we perceive as our ordinary wakeful consciousness is a very active state of mind or psychobiological state of being, which involves applying. See, I have a lot of these things. If you look at my, at the bottom, I have a lot of this stuff in boxes. You know, he used a lot of verbs. You know, he said it's an active state of mind. He says he used words, he says, which involves applying or using cognitive processes. You know, he goes on to say it involves the application. So the conscious is to do.
That's right.
Using us sitting around here reciting facts about Kemet and all of the great, you know, African kingdoms and spiritual systems, if we're not using this information to shape our reality. So to be conscious is to be active. And I want to drive that point home. And Dr. Amos Wilson, throughout this chapter, he uses verbs, active, applying, using, the application. So, you know, he's describing it as a force. So it's not just, you know, it's not just reciting facts and memorizing things. And, you know, it's about actually applying the information that we have to solve our problems and to shape our realities. So, you know, he says that it involves the application of various, and I'm moving on to 88, methods of information processing to what is known, recalled, believed, anticipated, expected, desired, or hoped for, relative to what is not, and using their outcomes to direct or regulate mental and physical behavior in order to achieve some intended result. That is consciousness. So then he goes on to say that states of consciousness, he said, are ranges of awareness, right? So there are different levels, there are different degrees to what consciousness is, the different levels, the different states, you know? And so he says an interesting fact is that human beings are self-conscious, and we have the capacity to know or be aware of the fact that we are aware or conscious. He said this self-reflective consciousness enables the person to review aspects of his own experience and experiencing, to know that he knows or that he is ignorant. Therefore, through self-reflective knowledge or awareness, individual consciousness can motivate its own transformation, can through positive and negative feedback based on internal and external sources, regulate and modulate its own state of being.
Self-awareness.
Self-awareness, right. So they're saying that the level of self-awareness that an individual has correlates with one's consciousness. And it can motivate one to transform, either good or bad, which makes sense.
Right.
The more you know, the better you do, they say,
Yes.
you know, that's that saying, but it actually should be the more you know, the better you do, hopefully.
Right.
And the more
Because
you
it's not
apply.
necessarily the case, you know what I mean?
Because it's an action word.
That's right.
Consciousness. You know, you can't just.
Yeah, like you guys is nailing us, applying.
Yes. Yes.
Mhm.
Yes. Action. Do.
That's right.
Do and be.
He goes on to say, to the degree to which the individual utilizes various modes of logical reasoning, deductive, inductive, analogical, modes of thinking, conceptual, intuitive, analytical, as a means of testing reality, comprehending and interacting with reality, or guiding his responses and behavior, determines within limits the degree to which his consciousness falls under his own control. So the way that we think and the way that we break down information, the way that we view things, that limits the degree to which our consciousness falls. I thought that was very interesting. And that makes sense, because if information is going over your head, then quite naturally you can't absorb that information to help to elevate your consciousness.
Right.
So consciousness can be by default, a person can be less conscious by default if they're maybe not as intelligent in a way.
If it's not evident, like the transformation has to become evident. It becomes evident within yourself first, identifying that, and then it's manifested outwardly. So the world benefits based off of how you present yourself. So if you purport to be an active participant or possessed by consciousness, we would see some evidence. You see what I'm saying?
Yes.
We would see the evidence. You know, we come from a show and prove culture. You see what I'm saying? So even in the educational system, is as bad as it is, you know, in mathematics, you have to show your work. You understand what I'm saying? So how did you arrive at your answer? So now we're looking at the process and methodology by which you arrive at your answer. You see what I'm saying? Your stance. You see what I'm saying? All of these components that are there. So this is very, very key in regards to consciousness, looking at it and approaching it from your lens. You see what I'm saying? Because you know your culture is your lens and how you look at the world. So this culture, if we're operating in a culture of consciousness, you see what I'm saying? We say conscious community. We should see the evidence. You see what I'm saying? Right. We see the evidence that supports your claim. You know, so if I say I'm conscious, you see what I'm saying, and you see me doing things that that doesn't, you know, align with or not succinct with, you know, that I'm giving you more evidence of the contrary than I am of the, you know, the actuality of my claim. So that's one thing.
Exactly. Yeah. And to sum that up, consciousness and behavior exude power, which is pretty much what the brother was just explaining, and what Baba finishes up on page 88. To get to what Dr. Maat was touching on earlier, he says, the bottom of 88, consciousness is a type of intelligence. It is creative, inventive, and innovative, and is therefore an adaptational instrument in both the reactive and proactive sense, which is used to deal with internal and external environmental demands. So that's the first time I'd ever heard that consciousness is a type of intelligence.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it says it can be used. I have this entire paragraph highlighted. It can be used to influence the individual's self and his environment relative to his perceptions, needs, desires, and expectations. Its formative past experiences determine the degree and extent to which it is available, to which it is able to generate and sustain the working relations of its internal and external universes in ways which enable the individual to realize his desires. That is consciousness, the modes of intelligence it characteristically develops and utilizes, is influenced to a marked degree by the types of social relations to which the individual has been exposed during his most impressionable developmental periods. And he's absolutely correct. And he emphasizes this point in his book, The Developmental Psychology of the Black Child. He talks about how the consciousness of the Black child is formed. And he drives home that our consciousness is also formed by our social relations.
Yes.
So how we, exactly.
And he also, has anybody heard his lecture on Blueprint for Black Power? Anybody listen to
I've seen bits and pieces of it.
He uses the example. He uses the example. Do you remember that part where he uses the example of people who even get on crack? He says that the people who get on drugs, you begin to see people that you never even saw before because of the thing and the activities that you become involved with when you socialize. He used the example of people who get on crack, people they didn't even know in their habits, in that environment. He says how you socialize alters your environment.
That's right. That's very true. This last paragraph that Dr. Maat just read reminded me of how, we sometimes think to attribute that if a person is a certain age, then they should have a certain level of consciousness or awareness. Yet it goes back to speak to what he just said, that if you weren't exposed to certain things in your most impressionable time, then it seems like by the time you get to a certain period, you could tap into another form of thinking or not. So it depends. So age is not indicative of a conscious level or what should be or should not be.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more.
Yes, that's correct. That's true.
And you know what I often say, and I think I've said it on Facebook, I said there are a lot of underdeveloped adults. Like we say, Sister Alima, we think we become a certain age that we are wise. Like you look at 40 people that are, older, you think, oh, they're wise. But there are a lot of underdeveloped adults. And they're undeveloped because they didn't get they didn't experience certain social they didn't have certain social or intellectual or spiritual experiences. So they're underdeveloped people, 40, 50, 60, 70, underdeveloped human beings. And so we kind of jumped ahead when we talked about how consciousness, I ain't gonna say we jumped ahead, it leads us into the next section. Social control theory, consciousness as an instrument of social control. So Amos Wilson says that consciousness can be socialized. Okay, so remember in the last paragraph, he ended by saying that, that it could be that the degree of consciousness, or I guess your level of consciousness, it can be influenced, I guess, by your social relations. So here he's saying, hey, consciousness can be socialized. So he said, therefore, consciousness is the premier instrument of social control. So whoever can mold and shape your consciousness can control your behavior. They can control you, thus control your behavior, or even not even control your behavior, but also predict your behavior. All right?
Yes.
That's right.
So he said control. So I didn't jump ahead. So to control consciousness is to control behavior, or at least to limit its possibilities. So this is on page 89. So I'm at the bottom, and I have a few things highlighted. Wakeful consciousness represents as the highest levels of mental and physical integration. So mental and physical integration. He said that is wakeful consciousness, and that is the highest levels of consciousness, right? And he says that consciousness operates as a regulatory field for behavior and is intimately related to action. So Baba drove home that point that consciousness and behavior, consciousness and action goes hand in hand.
It's powerful.
Absolutely. So we know that it can be socialized. So if it can be socialized, then that means that it can be controlled. All right.
Right.
So I think I read that. So he said to be self-aware, self-knowing, That is to be aware of and in some degree in control of our own motives and feelings, is to be self-controlling, to possess the ability to exercise voluntary control over our own behavior. High levels of self-knowledge, self-awareness facilitate high levels of self-control. So when you're conscious, you know, when you're conscious, or when you have a high level of consciousness, Dr. Amos Wilson is saying that you're in control of self.
Yes.
You know, you're in control of your desires, your behavior, the things that the urges. You have self-control.
Right.
That's right.
So you should have self-control.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, I'm on page 9.
Motives was critical in that, you know, and that's also a way how consciousness can be controlled, you know, because you really get brothers and sisters out here that really want to know what's going on, and then, you know, they meet all of the snake oil salesmen before they meet the genuine ones. You see what I'm saying? Because the snake oil salesman's got all the attention. You see what I'm saying? So you got to sift and mine through now. You know, so based off of that motive, you can be taken advantage of based on your zeal. You really want to know, you know, you trust, you know, you trusting that somebody's giving you the right information or steering you on the path, you know, based off of that. And also, you know, just approaching this from an African center without those rites of passages for the young brothers and sisters early on. Their minds are not shaped and molded and grown into, you know, they got rites of passages from the European TV and all of this virtual. Now the virtual standing has really taken a hold and a shape on the mind. So now the virtual world is affecting the real world and having more precedence in standing than, you know, the real world used to have, the world that we grew up in. You see what I'm saying? So lack of that common knowledge and lack of that common experience comes into play again. So, you know, you don't know who you're going to meet if you're meeting a sheep or a wolf out there. You see what I'm saying? Somebody waiting to take advantage of you based off of your innocence. So then that robs you from an experience later on. You like, you know, forget it. I'm not messing with nothing conscious based off of an experience that I had with one person. And, you know, our people's attention span in regards to anything that deals with us. You see, we have one bad experience with us and we done with everything. No matter how many times we go to Walmart or any of these places and we have bad experiences or they don't have what we need, we continue to go back. But as soon as we get one, you know, misunderstanding or miscommunication, or we go into it jadedly, you know, with our own motives again, like it was speaking about, you know, these types of things happen. So I just wanted to add that point.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you're right. One bad experience, and you hear brothers say, that's why I don't support Black owned and operated businesses.
That's right.
That's that whole temporary. He starts talking all of that crazy stuff.
All that stupid stuff.
Exactly. So Bible says that low levels of consciousness, low levels, he says, this is the top paragraph, page 90. Low levels of self-awareness and self-knowledge bring about the opposite effect. So that's exactly what Brother Knowledge Born was just talking about. And I just wanted to acknowledge Minister Asar for joining us. Thank you so much, Brother Asar from the Temple of New African Thought for joining us.
Peace and power, family.
Yes, peace.
So like Brother Knowledge Born just stated, that when you don't have knowledge of self, then you will go out here. Like if you look at the youth, they don't know. So we say, why do these brothers walk around with their pants hanging off their butts? Why do these sisters, you know, why don't they value what's between their legs? These are people who are operating at a low level of self-awareness, a low level of self-knowledge. And that's what we're dealing with. And I'm gonna be honest, that's what helped me to develop passion or compassion for my brothers and sisters. Because I initially was angry. Like, why do we look like this? You know what I mean? Like, why do the sisters carry themselves like that? Or why do the brothers carry themselves like that? And it wasn't until I realized that these people have been miseducated, and thus they are operating at a low level of consciousness. And so that's why they exhibit these certain behaviors.
Yes.
And they social group that gives them their sense of identity dresses that way. So if you're part of a group in a network in which that's the way they socialize, then you reflect that particular social group.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely.
And just, going back to what you said, sis, yeah, when you see certain behaviors, like you said about that compassion, when I see people now, acting out or, not exactly operating, in a, conscious manner, in the community, I have compassion for them. I'll be like, oh, look at those. That's why we don't have, I understand because I know why they're in that situation.
Absolutely.
Well, conscious, understanding, and also if you have a knowledge of history, you know why, things are the way they are because it's on purpose.
Yep, that's right.
Okay. So he says in some, and I want Mr. Assar to read the top of page 91. He reads this every time he's on his show, the Conscious Black Business Network. He opens up with this box at the top of page 91. But before we get there, I just want to read the last paragraph on page 90. Dr. Amos Wilson says, in sum, consciousness is an instrument of social control and power. It is the means by which personal and social behavior is controlled. You're controlled by your consciousness, right? By your level of awareness. It says, hence the society and culture, particularly those who represent and exercise societal and cultural authority, seek to shape and direct the consciousness of each of the societies and cultures members in ways which maintain their integrity and advance their, i.e. the societies, cultures, and the authorities, though often not the same, their interests. It is through its shaping and directing of individual consciousness that the society achieves social control, i.e. power over individual and social behavior. The socially shaped and directed individual consciousness thereby becomes the society's instrument of social control. The individual empowers the society to control him when he sees or surrenders the creation and direction of his consciousness to the virtual, complete, unquestioned, unopposed control of others who represent the society to him. When I thought about this, family, when I read this paragraph, I thought about I'm gonna call it the miseducation system. We call it the educational system. Right? I completely thought about the educational system and how they shape and mold our minds for their interests. So I automatically thought about that. And here he says, it is very important to keep in mind that what we have said here, as it applies to individual consciousness, also applies without qualification to group consciousness. So Minister Assar, take it from the top on page 91, if you can.
All right. Peace and power, family, again. Sorry about the tardiness. I'm just getting in. So you want me to read the top of 91, Dr. Maat?
Please.
All right. So consciousness. I'm hearing some feedback. So should I keep going?
I just muted Brother Toe's mic. Peace and power to you, Brother Toe.
Peace, brother. All right. Consciousness refers to a level of physiological and psychological arousal which permits the individual to be conscious or aware of his internal and external environments and facilitates his ability to regulate his cognitive and behavioral capabilities towards achieving goals he finds desirable. Consciousness is a type of active intelligence. By that, it is an adaptational force which utilizes instinctual, habitual, innovative, inventive, and creative approaches in responding to various environmental demands and incentives. Because of its ability to bring about mental, socially, and physical change in both the individual's internal and external circumstances, consciousness may be perceived as fundamental and essential. And I'm sorry, let me go back, y'all. I gotta clean my glasses. Consciousness may be perceived as the fundamental and essential form of human power. How much power it represents, the nature and outcomes of its influence on the individual's internal and external worlds depend on its level of arousal, organizational, and functional state. The organizational and functional state of consciousness which determine the impact it will have on its world, depends on the interactive relations between three of its major componential factors: its factual, experiential contents, mental, behavioral instrumentalities, and directional organizational orientations. Is that what? Stop.
Yes.
Okay, let me clean
Yes. So does anyone want to elaborate on that? I mean, I think it kind of sums up everything that we've been talking about thus far in the chapter.
Yeah, basically summed up everything, physiological, psychological, the mind, what's your senses as to what goes by, your cognitive behaviors, how you are able to for the betterment of your group or to the detriment of your group, and just being organized, and functioning as an organism, as a living organism, thinking, breathing, and being about it.
I mean, when I read this chapter, I just thought about our babies and just how important it is for us to be the primary molders and shapers of their consciousness. You know what I mean? Like the importance of erecting schools that will shape their consciousness. The educational system, media. I mean, this society, they produce tools to shape your consciousness. School, media, so music, television, the internet, commercials, all of these different things shape our consciousness. So when I read that consciousness, reading that consciousness is an instrument of social control, it makes me feel like in order for us to gain control of ourselves, we have to gain control over our consciousness. But in order to gain control over our consciousness, then that will require us to erect our own educational institutions, right? That will transmit a certain type of consciousness.
Yes, right.
I mean, that's where I am.
Well, school is the first indoctrination. That's kind of how I see it. We send your kids to school, they're being indoctrinated with a history that's incorrect, and so it just goes on and on with the social media and television. It just all helps to indoctrinate their minds in anti-African.
And then you go from school to church. So your consciousness.
Right. It's a whole cycle. It's a whole cycle of anti-Africanness. It's for the dominant culture people.
That's right, and that's what he goes on to talk about power. That's the very basis and the root of he talks about power is for them the ability to control our thinking and the way we perceive ourselves, and operate, for their particular interests is the basis of power. He was using.
Exactly.
Absolutely. And he goes on, like you say, there are a couple of definitions at the bottom of the page. We won't read them. He defines factual, experiential contents, mental behavior, instrumentalities, directional organizational orientations. And just like you said, Brother Travis, on page 92, he talks about the disempowerment and the empowerment of African consciousness. So, so he goes on to say, well, how is African consciousness disempowered by white power? He said white power seeks to disempower African consciousness by adversely falsifying, limiting, or manipulating its contents and or impairing or constricting its instrumentalities and or misdirecting its directional organizational orientations under the guiding influence of self-serving European-centered values. That was powerful. So he said the way to empower, African people, he said you have to empower African consciousness by Black power. Black power seeks to empower African consciousness, he said, by expanding the factual knowledge base. So with Europeans, remember, they disempowered us by limiting and falsifying, right, contents, right, that mold and shape our consciousness. Whereas Black power, he says, it expands, the factual knowledge base of its contents and making its factual and other contents functionally relevant to resolving the problems of African peoples, maximally enhancing and expanding the instrumentalities and bringing both its contents and instrumentalities under guiding influence of African-centered directional, organizational orientations or values. So that's the difference between white power and black power.
That's right. One is meant to big up the white people, and the other is meant to big up us.
Absolutely.
Which of course, with leading into the next topic, you know, our morals and values definitely would depend on whether we are empowered or de-empowered. Baba says that values are standards by which we determine what is preferable, appropriate, important, good, desirable, or what ought to be. They help to determine and direct our behavior. So whatever we deem to be important, our morals and values are what's going to shape our behavior, and our behavior is directly correlated with our level of consciousness. He says at the end, moreover, values like consciousness are socialized in that they are deeply influenced and created by the cultural, religious, and life experiences undergone by the individual, as well as the social environment in which he currently operates. So once again, like he says, values and consciousness are one and the same. They're also socialized, and they are influenced by the way in which we grew up. And if you grow up in a culture and society that doesn't mimic your own, then quite naturally your values are going to mimic that of the dominant culture, which our values do for the most part. They're not necessarily African rooted. They're more so rooted in what it is that we know, which is European behavior and culture.
Absolutely, sis. And we would, you know, it could be easily demonstrated that we have adopted a value system that isn't conducive to our advancement as a people. The values that we have, you know, I've heard people say things like, and this is just, you know, they won't buy, you know, an educational tool for their children, but they'll buy $200, you know, Jordans or True Religion jeans and things. Our values, and I was thinking about writing a paper called Reconstructing the African Value System. You know, because we're controlled by our values, the things that we value. I remember looking at my Facebook feed, Sister Alima, a few days ago, and I was utterly appalled. And people were trying to justify this degenerate behavior, but I was utterly appalled during the hurricane. I think it was called Hurricane Irma down in the Florida area. Black folks were looting.
Yeah, they were.
Yeah, we were looting. You know, you had folks coming out with TVs and sneakers, you know, not stealing, you know, they weren't looting stores to get food or to get food, water, batteries, candles, matches, gas, tents, you know, tents, flashlights, batteries. I mean, we were actually going in stores, and we were breaking in Foot Locker stores, breaking in retail stores. And then so you had some folks from the, you know, RBG community, they were justifying it. Well, white people loot and all of this. And I don't care about that. Let them do what they do. What I care about is what we do. And what I saw was a reflection of our values. Yeah. So during the middle of a hurricane, instead of you saying, look, I need to make sure that my family, I'm talking about the things that we should value. Let me make sure my family, you know, let me make sure my family is straight. Let me make sure we have everything that we need. We were looting, Sister Alima.
Not taking the stuff that you need. That's right.
What, Brother Travis? Go ahead. Go ahead, elaborate.
I agree what you're saying. Take the stuff that you need. I mean, if you know you wasn't prepared and you don't have enough, what you should have had enough food to sustain yourself, take what you need. Now, I don't agree with the TVs and stuff like that you were saying, but if you got a house full of kids, you didn't prepare yourself correctly, and there's a store there, take it.
But I don't agree with that either. Because why didn't you prepare yourself correctly?
Because they not conscious.
When do we get to the mindset? When do we get to the mindset that where we do what we need to do and we don't put ourselves in predicaments to where we have to devalue ourselves? Because I'm not going to go steal shit if I know that you've been hearing about this hurricane for how long now and you didn't go and prepare yourself. And so that gives you the right to go and break into somebody else's business. I don't give a damn if they're white, black, yellow, or green to steal because you feel that you need something for your family. I think that's property values as well.
Because we're not prepared, like you said, sister. The very thing that you're saying is we as a people are not prepared. We don't have we have not sustained ourselves and organized ourselves in what you're doing. Now, what you're saying is from a value perspective, I totally agree. But if the person has a house full of kids and they don't have food and there's no way to get food to you, what do you do? The water was at such a level that a lot of blacks are going to be the last, just like in New Orleans. Of course, we're going to be the last people that they're going to respond to. But if the people are not prepared, and it is on us, and people who are conscious, it's on us to make sure our people are taken care of. But if you got a house full of kids, a woman might be on welfare, I don't know, a situation like that, what do you do? If they can't get to you and you need food to sustain yourself, what do you do?
I don't know, brother. I guess that's a tough one. I don't know.
I'll tell you what you do. You go in, you take some water. you go and it could, because the system itself, I mean, I understand values. I'm real high on values. Right?
Yeah, I agree. She's right, though. She's right.
I get what y'all saying. I get what you're saying in a survival sense. I understand that.
But I know what you're saying. From a value standpoint, you are right.
But I would suggest that there's something greater. See, the lack of values in this country is what put them in a predicament.
Yes.
And anybody with value, like let's say we talk about community. So when you talk about community, communities have values. Now let's say we're in the community, right? Now, if people were starving and I had a store that was flooding out and my people needed something to eat, I wouldn't have a problem with them going into the store and taking the stuff. See what I'm saying? Because that will be coming from a moral value standpoint.
Right.
See, it becomes a criminal act when you don't feel like you're a part of the community. See, that in itself is a problem. And that's what we need to talk about.
Joel Osteen.
But he's white. We don't. I didn't expect sustainability. Yeah.
I guess the main point that I'm trying to drive home is that too often we make too many excuses and we say things like, oh, well, she's on welfare or this and that. We all know that we're disadvantaged. Many of us have been disadvantaged peoples for a long time, but that is not an excuse as to preparation, as to what you need and don't need. You got a house full of kids. You better be as prepared as you possibly can, and you always should be. Why the hell should you need to run and get prepared now because there's a storm or there's something going on? Ma, you should already be prepared from a mother's standpoint. We have to get to the point where we are more self-sufficient. The reason why we aren't prepared in our homes is because we're always dependent upon the government, aka the white man, that, hey, if this goes on, the FEMA truck is going to come get me. I know they're going to send a National Guard to get us, this and that and the third. What if you don't have those advantages? Yes. What if there are no stores for you to break in and take something from? And then what? That's the mindset that our people need to have. Our mindset is too reactive. It's not proactive. That's all I'm saying. I understand what you're saying. We just have to do better as a people. So I get tired of that. We're always the ones at the bottom of the totem pole. We never have what we need when we need it.
Right.
We are very reactionary. Go ahead.
And the reason why they have what they have is because they stole it in the first place. Now, I understand exactly. And I think that you can look at it. You can look at it both ways, right? And I'm with you. But we gotta be. And I'm not a victim, or I'm not a conscious of oppression type of brother. I'm a conscious of victory type of brother. Naim Akbar in his book Afrocentricity speaks to that. So we do have to do better. But when you sat down and you talk to people, we have to realize that in this very chapter, I think I heard you guys read that Dr. Amos Wilson said it's about that education. We got to keep in mind whose education, how they're being educated to think that these people are their people. Because again, if they were their people, you will have no problem with your people. Your government won't say you're looting when you're hungry. They'll say they're trying to survive. Because now there's always situations, right, where the person could, your house get flooded. You might have had your water somewhere that's, this water was up to roof levels. You know what I'm trying to say? You could prepare for all hell, But come on, let's be real. You can't prepare for water at the top of your roof. You know, I mean, and you might have a boat with some water in it, but you know, it won't be considered looting if people had to survive. At that point, all the rules go out. But TVs and sneakers and all that shows us our level of development. We probably put more sneakers in the boat than put water and food in the boat. So that shows us we're having a serious problem, and they have us exactly where we are, stuck to a materialistic standpoint. And a materialistic standpoint ain't white, black, orange, yellow. It's just called materialistic and lost. And that's where they want us. That's a low level of consciousness, where a high level of consciousness is where Dr. Amos Wilson is speaking. I mean, anybody can really reach this level of consciousness no matter who they are. But specifically for us, yes, we got to get away from these being attached to these comfort creatures. It's a lot of work that needs to be done. But yes, I'm with both of you. I can go both ways. I understand.
Right, and I understand both ways as well, brothers.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, absolutely. So on page 93, he says that Black power requires that Blacks originate their own values and that those values be exercised by them in their own interests.
Yes.
So remember earlier, I was saying that we have a value system that isn't conducive to our advancement, right? So Black power requires us to originate our own values. And those values be exercised by them in their own interest. So in our best interest, what we value. We should be valuing things like family, community, business, or economics.
Yes.
What else was I going with it? What else was going? Our culture, our history. You get what I'm saying? Our children.
Yes.
Our children.
That's right.
I mean, and I want to have a discussion with you all because I put on Facebook a while ago. I said we don't really value our children. People had a heart attack, Sister Alima.
I know
they did. Say, Dr. Oh yeah, I love my kids. I value my children. No, you don't.
Right.
No, you don't. No, you don't.
Nope.
That's why the youth. I can go outside right now, Sister Alima, and drive up the street to 7-Eleven. You'll see a whole bunch of youth hanging out doing nothing.
Right.
Where's
your mom? That's right.
Where's the village?
That's right.
How do we value our children? How do we value our children? Our children are crying out right now for attention.
Yep.
We talk about we value our children.
We consume our individualism.
Yeah, that's
That's right.
So we need to value our future, and that starts with valuing our legacy. And our legacy is our baby. So we need to value things like that.
Dr. Maat.
Yes.
Can I say one more thing?
Go ahead, Mr.
To go with my sister here, we have a prison ministry where we go inside the prison, and this is a very important point that a brother shed light on to me. We was inside, and he said that we say we out in the street. We're selling drugs, we robbing people, and we say we gotta survive. We gotta survive. We gotta survive. We gotta survive. And it's a brother, he's in DC. He's from DC. He's like, yeah, that's what we say. We tell ourselves we gotta survive. We gotta survive. But he said, hell no, you ain't gotta survive. Surviving ain't having to buy all those sneakers. Surviving, he said surviving ain't selling drugs and having the drugs in your house with your children. He said, because you already know the consequences that probably will happen when you have drugs in your house, when you have you land with your children in the house. People know where you are, you know what you did to somebody. So he said, no, it's more than needing to survive. That's an excuse. But so that brother shed some serious light on in my mind when he said, look, it's bigger than that. And that goes with what you're saying, Dr. Maat. Look, we and what the brother's saying is that, our values and, we're caught up in this materialistic reality, and that itself is the enemy.
Yes.
Right.
Absolutely.
That's not reality.
Absolutely. And like earlier this week, I know you guys heard of the whole Kanika Jenkins story about the young lady they found in a freezer in Chicago. And initially the story was going around that she was drugged, she was raped, her friends set her up for $200. And now, new footage has surfaced saying that that she walked down to the freezer and she put herself in the freezer. So, it's a lot of little, stories going around, about what may have occurred. But the point I want to make is this. When the first story dropped, and, it was a rumor that her friends set her up for $200. And I remember my son Isaiah asking me, he's like, how could you set your friend up, for $200? I said, because she doesn't value friendship, she values money.
Right.
Her values.
Right.
Her values. So we got to understand, and I love how Dr. Amos Wilson drove home this point in this subsection, that our behavior is rooted in our values. So if you just sit back and you examine the behavior of an individual, it tells you what their values are. I can infer what your values are simply by watching and analyzing how you behave. So anyway, on page 93, he goes into cultural values. Cultural values. Cultural values are a means by which a cultural group achieves and retains self-control, control regulated and directed by its own values. Okay? He says, in this light, it is not difficult to infer that to achieve deep and practical social control or social power over blacks, dominant whites had to deculturate blacks, i.e. strip them of their original African cultures, languages, consciousness, and values in order to instill in them a new subordinate culture and cultural values compatible with white economic and social interests. I thought about hip hop music, the panel. Yep. I thought about hip hop music when I read this. That's just the whole culture that it promotes. And in the culture, I call it deaf culture, but the deaf culture that it promotes, this is a culture that whites or Jews, this is a culture that they benefit from, so they promote drugs, they promote crime, they need bodies to fill up these prisons. I mean, they're building high-tech prisons as we speak. So how do we get the bodies in there? Okay, well, let's pump certain music, certain degenerate behaviors. Let's promote this stuff through the music. Let's put it on television. Let's put it on the internet, right? So I was thinking about that, how we have been, it's almost like we've been given a culture. We've given values, right? That leads to that
dysfunctional, the pathology,
white establishment. Voices? Voices?
Oh, I was saying, yeah, the dysfunction and pathologies.
That's right.
Absolutely.
That's, being a musician, I can attest to that, having, worked at these labels. I know just how they designed it, when it was positive and, basically when it was a black thing before white people got involved in it, the music was positive and it was diverse as well. You always had some slackness in it, but you also had a positive, imagery, people wearing African medallions, things like that. And, as soon as, white people became in control of it, because white youth wasn't going to listen to black people talking about black power, gradually changed the narrative, which started with basically NWA. It was such a big hit. All the record companies, all the major companies got into it and started promoting that. You couldn't even present yourself as a positive group, or anything with any type of, black values that, white people weren't telling you that you should, when you go to meetings, it'll be a white person telling you what's hip and what, our own music.
Exactly. Because they wanted to make sure that they transmitted a certain consciousness, they wanted to put us on a certain frequency, a certain consciousness.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
And they're the ones that buy all that music. All that, ratchetness. That's why it makes so much money, because, white people live vicariously through that.
Exactly.
It gives them honor. It gives them legitimacy. Our value system, we never had an opportunity here in America. One, we were not brought to America to live. We were brought to America. We were kidnapped. Our ancestors were brought here to work until they died. So we have the same culture, and we've been living in that culture for a very, very long time. We have not lived. We have not had an opportunity to live. We never had being black is illegal in America. We know that. You understand what I'm saying? Right. Being black, standing up and being black, we watched our ancestors be assassinated, taken off of the planet for standing up and saying, hey, we need to do some things for ourselves. Right. You understand what I'm saying? So we are, so They had to show those black people stealing. They had to show them. You see what I'm saying? Because whatever happens to them after that, they can always point to that video. If black people are so great, look at what they're doing. You understand? So
Right.
it's there as a mechanism of control. See yourself in a likeness as a criminal. You're a criminal. All you want to do is be a people of sport and play. You know, you want welfare. All of these things that we know are stretches of the truth. You see what I'm saying? Or just incidents. However, it shapes our consciousness in a way where we look at our own people with disgust. You see what I'm saying? And it continues to feed that self-hatred. You see what I'm saying? We're not approaching our problem from an African center. We're approaching our problems, our maladies, our social ills from a European perspective. You see what I'm saying? And so we're not dealing in reconciliation. We're not dealing in a healing type of nature. We're coming in a condemnatory type of tone and manner for our people. You see what I'm saying? So we're not going to remedy the situation. We're going to make more criminals. We're going to make more rebellion. Our youth are at war with us right now. You see what I'm saying? Yeah. Because white America has figured out how to control tomorrow.
Right.
So our children, wholeheartedly, Dr. Maat, when you said we don't value our children, we're not teaching our children. We're not feeding and clothing our children. Our enemy is responsible for all of these things. You see what I'm saying? So anything that our enemy brings to us is designed for our destruction. Established when we first was reading these readings. Anything that our enemy brings to us is for our destruction. So no matter what they implement, no matter what law, no matter what statute, no matter what it is, whatever they bring to us is for our destruction. So if they're giving us hip hop, they're giving us hip hop to destroy us. If they're giving us food, they're giving us food to destroy us. If they're giving us education, they're giving us education to destroy us. An opportunity in America to even be African. You see what I'm saying? Like it's a contradiction in terms. We don't belong here. You see what I'm saying? We don't belong here. You know, we're doing things because we're disconnected from, we're dismembered from the part and body that we need to embody. So this value system has to be reestablished. What we value and what we accept for value. You see what I'm saying? And knowing that we have to create situations where which people that do not share our value system cannot be allowed around us. They can't be allowed around our children, anything of the sort. You see what I'm saying? So
I share.
Yeah.
Okay. I agree 100% with Brother Knowledge. Moving on, family. We on 94 now, right?
Yes, let's get into group consciousness.
Get into group consciousness. Dr. Baba starts to talk about group consciousness and how group consciousness, excuse me, can be used as a power source as well. Right here at the beginning, he gives us a quick definition. It says, if the sets of values, modes of thinking, beliefs, and much more which define and direct an individual's consciousness are shared by or compatible with other individuals who mutually consider themselves to be the members of a distinct group, who socially and behaviorally interact in order to achieve mutually desired ends, who initiate and regulate their individual behavior, interests in accordance with the interests of the groups of which they are members, who identify many of their personal interests with the interests of the group of which they are members, and who see membership in their group as vitally important to achieving both personal aims, then it may be inferred that they have generated and share in group consciousness. So basically, group consciousness are those who have the same values, the same ideas, typically the same culture, the same likenesses, that all want to get together to come together for a common goal. I think it made me think about the conscious community, and I'm not even gonna go there, but it just made me. It just made me think about the conscious community and how it's a big mess.
Yeah.
But, on to cultural consciousness. Next is what Baba starts to talk about. He says, to the degree that such groups have been formed as a result of a shared or common social history, a shared or common ancestry and ethnicity, have been socialized according to the same or similar social practices as prescribed by the same or similar institutions, have been trained and motivated to act and interact in ways which maintain and advance the interests of the larger group, it can be inferred that they participate in sharing a cultural consciousness. A group or culture that shares a common consciousness empowers both itself and its individual members.
Now, sis, I got to be honest. When I thought about this, when he defined group consciousness, cultural consciousness, and then a common consciousness, and he said the common consciousness empowers itself in its individual members. I remember, and your husband was also on this documentary by Brother Keith Horton, and he has a documentary called Revolution or Exodus, and it should be coming out this fall. And he interviewed a lot of folks for this documentary, and one of the questions he posed was, he said, what would be the catalyst to spark a mass revolution or exodus? And I mean, Sister Lima, when he asked me that, I sat there and I said, I don't know, I said, I don't know. I said, I think that white folks have done everything humanly possible to us, from mass incarcerating our men, women, and children to raping, murdering us, deindustrializing our communities, putting drugs, flooding our communities with drugs, separating the family. So I was just like, I don't know what would spark a mass revolution or exodus. But if I had to answer that question today, I would say the revolution or the mass revolution or the mass exodus will take place when we become of like mind to liberate ourselves from underneath this system, when we develop a group consciousness, a cultural consciousness, and a common consciousness. So I wish I would have read Blueprint for Black Power.
I know, right?
Before he interviewed me, because I was kind of like sitting there like, I don't know what the catalyst would be, but the catalyst would be when we become when we all get tired, when the majority of us get tired. My auntie used to say, when you get sick and tired of being sick and tired, that's when the mass revolution and mass exodus will take place.
It just seems like, per the definition of group consciousness, when you put that in correlation to the conscious community, it seems that we have that. It seems that it is applicable, but then I think about what is the biggest hindrance within it, and I think it's ego.
Yes, I agree.
I don't think it's common ideas or, or mutually shared goals. I mean, I feel like we all have the same goals and ideas. I maybe a little bit different here and there, but pretty much the same goal. But I really think that it's the ego. It's the ego that gets in the way and what stops the formal organization of a real, actually community, a real community across the country. I just think that's the problem.
Everybody's a leader. There's no labor.
That's right.
Can I just throw a little something up in there? I don't think we are. I've already tried it. I've thrown it out there, so I can almost say that I've done the survey. I would suggest that no, we don't. We don't have a common goal. We may know certain words and phrases that we say, but we have to define exactly what that is. Then you're going to start hearing a whole bunch of stuff. And how do we get there? That's a whole nother situation. So we might all say liberation. So, but to many, what is liberation and what does that look like?
It varies.
So I would suggest from that standpoint that we all say liberation. Salvation, some of us, that is in the mind, some of that is separation, some of that is on the plantation, some of that these things would denote or denote that basically we don't have the shared values or beliefs, or because let's say if you go to a Christian church, they know they're going to go to heaven. They know that you got to have, Jesus died on 3 days and so on and so forth, and you got to believe this and so on and so forth. They know that. Us, we have so many paths to not even the same destination because we don't even agree on the destination.
So we're extremely sectarian people, I think, and that's through the extreme individualism and also being misinformed. I think that it can happen within a group. People with like minds who are like in this particular group here to begin to articulate those views, and like minds will come together. I think that it's going to still be sectarian. You're not going to be able to get everybody, but you can organize, people with like minds to create something.
Absolutely.
Exactly. And that's what I'm talking about. I think when I say that the end game, I feel like the end game of most conscious people, I'm not talking about all Black people. Just to clarify that, because that's just too broad. I'm talking about conscious people or people who deem themselves to be conscious, most of them have the same goal, which is to liberate Black people. Now, of course, liberation is subjective, but in essence, it has something to do with, we all know, ending white supremacy. I think we all can agree on that. I haven't really heard too many, be it Amor or whoever, I don't know too many of them that don't necessarily want to end white supremacy. But that's why I said I think the issue is in ego, because we all have different ways in which we think that we should get there. And so that becomes our problem. It's like, who's going to be the leader? Who's going to listen to who? Is it my group that's going to be in charge? Is it your group that's going to be in charge? I think that's our problem. You know, it's like you'll see, say, take social media, take Facebook, for instance. You might find 1,000 groups and they're all doing the same thing. And it's like, why can't all those groups come together if they all have, in essence, the same goal? It's that ego, because it's like, this is my platform, so how about you join mine? No, how about you join mine? We don't understand hierarchy, and that is kind of necessary.
But how do you end white supremacy, and what is ending white supremacy?
Well, I don't know. All I said was that I said that I believe that is the end goal. I didn't say that I was the
No, not you. It's for anyone, because I mean, it's the question is pertinent, because I'm suggesting that we're going to disagree on what white supremacy is. So we're going to disagree on, if we can't agree on what white supremacy is, then that's a part of the problem.
White supremacy.
And I'm saying, and let me finish this 1 second. We would if we don't agree on what white supremacy is, then we can't. I lost my thought. Go ahead, brother. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. I've lost mine now. You keep going, brother. I lost mine.
Well, I think you're saying, like, how can we get to how we end it if we can agree what it is?
Right, because this is what I wanted to say. Thank you. No, I'm talking about the conscious community. I don't worry about those who are on the outside of the peripheral and so on and so forth. My whole thing is the conscious community.
Right.
The quote unquote conscious community. But you guys started this off. I was listening to, which that's the term y'all don't like, huh? But nonetheless, what I'm suggesting is, from what I heard, I was driving home and I heard that you guys were speaking about Dr. Amos Wilson's definition for consciousness, and then we already counted out the conscious community from the conscious for what consciousness is.
Right.
So what I'm saying is that is evident that the conscious community is non-existent in reality. It's an idea. It's abstract. It's not real. So no, we don't agree on the same thing, because I can sit with Dr. Maat and her and we can go and get on the phone, and we can get on the phone forever, and we love each other. But guess what? She ain't gonna look. But we're gonna agree with more than what we disagree on. But I always stretch imagination. So when people finish with me, they're gonna be upset with me. But because at the end of the day, we don't know what white supremacy is. To me, white supremacy is a theory, is an idea, is a concept, and you don't have to be white to be a white supremacist. And not all white people are white supremacists. Now, some people would say something other than that.
I would agree with what you're saying, but though they might not agree with it, they benefit from it.
Well, a lot of people benefit from white supremacy, including Al Sharpton and Jesse Jackson and so on and so forth.
No, I agree with what you just said, brother Assad. Everybody who is black ain't black. So what I'm saying is that it is leadership. Even police officers, I've ran into white supremacist black men who brutalized black men in the name of white supremacy.
Exactly.
So I totally agree with what you're saying is, far as it as a system, whereas it as a system, it's about disempowering black people. What I mean by white supremacy, meaning that politically, economically, socially, the interest is about empowering them and maintaining them in power.
And who are they?
White people. Who could
and I think that's part of the illusion. Mm-hmm. And I'll tell you why.
Go ahead.
Because, see, slavery and white supremacy is a status system. See, white people is a fiction, first of all. It's something that was made up in the 16th, 17th century, right? To create and co-opt other white people who weren't even considered white people. These people weren't even considered white people. So white people is a fiction. It's something that was made up to make other poor white people who are poorer than us in many cases feel like they got something. So what that does is make you feel like, oh, I got something, so I'm going to have to crack the whip on a nigga. And then, so it's really status. And many people can be white supremacists if they know it or not. It don't matter. White supremacy really doesn't have anything to do with color. But other than those who created it are white.
Question, brother Sar. Is there a group of people who have of a different color than us, who have banks, who control the police departments, who murder us, and we go to court and they get off and even murdered us on film? Is there people that collectively control world banks in their particular interests and exploit us as a people? Who are they?
Okay, explain.
Who are they who control? Who are they who control International Monetary Fund?
Oh no, I would agree. I would agree with you on that. I would agree with you that the powers that be are the white supremacists.
Okay.
What I'm trying to tell you is that little cracker down in South Baltimore, so excuse my language, but he don't have no much more power. The only power he got is being white. And guess what? We like to say that white give them privilege, but they are less mobile than us. We are more upwardly mobile than a poor white person. They've been poor since they got here. I'm talking about poor Spics, poor Italians, poor whoever. They've been poor since they got here when they were chattel at one time. And two, they were indentured. So that was a nice word. They were slaves. They were all this. So they are still poor. They more poor than they don't even go upwardly mobile. They don't have a Dr. Maat story as much as we have. Those same people in South Baltimore been poor from generation to generation to generation. So what I'm trying to tell you, it's an illusion. It's a game that they play on us because to keep everybody divided.
Well, it works. We got to move on.
It works well. It works well.
Finish these. I don't even think we're going to get to chapter 5. I'm sitting here looking at the time like, no. I don't even think
powerful topic tonight. Powerful dialogue. I love it.
I love it. It's getting thick in here. I'm just sitting here listening. But I said, we ain't going to get far.
But I just want to, on page 95, I want to drive home this point. Dr. Amos Wilson said the stronger or more powerful the group consciousness, the more likely the group is to achieve its aims. It's the strength of group consciousness, the degree to which the members of the group are loyal to its values, right? Committed to its survival and enhancement, and the degree to which the members of a group can work together to defend the group against negative intentions of others and achieve its aims. He says it depends on the degree to which its members are proudly aware of their membership to the group, are seen to be identified by others and themselves as members of the group, and are revered of the group, embrace it in high esteem, and are committed to enhancing its social status and power relative to other groups. So the strength of our consciousness, the way we feel about our group, our ethnic group, all of those things play a part in strengthening our group consciousness, our esteem, how we view our people. And so, and I love how in the next chapter, he's going to get into that. The self-concept, the self-system, self-evaluation, self-perception, self-identity, and how all of these things play a role in strengthening or either weakening our group consciousness. Because you got some folks that don't want to call themselves Black. They don't want to call themselves African, right? Because of how they view the ethnic group.
Yes, that's true.
Will be our allies.
Absolutely. So he ends page 95 with saying the power of a group is weakened or destroyed, right? To the proportion its members are A, ashamed of being members of it, B, wish to deny their membership in it, crave membership in a rival group, D, do not hold themselves or their group in high esteem, E, are alienated or psychologically separated from or resist identifying with the group, its history and culture, ethnic and or social characteristics, because these seem incompatible with the standards of other groups whom they esteem more highly than their own, and whose acceptance, recognition, and approval are considered more important than those of their own group. F, have failed to develop their personal potential, cognitive, social, and occupational skills for the benefit of themselves and their group because of their unwanted or embarrassing membership in it has destroyed their confidence in their ability. And G, if they have developed themselves within severe limits and their skills only as means of gaining employment by and or the acceptance of a rival group. All right, so these are the things that will weaken our our consciousness. And throughout this entire paragraph, you hear how it goes back to the esteem, how you feel about your particular ethnic group, and how that will weaken the consciousness or the group consciousness. All right, so now he gets into white consciousness versus black consciousness. And so he says the control of consciousness is a primary objective of interpersonal and intergroup interactions, because consciousness is instrumental to the achievement of certain ends. One group or individual often strives to shape and control the consciousness of the other as means for helping to achieve its own goals.
Yes.
So what are the instruments of control? Media, education, religion, right?
That's right.
Value. You know, these are the different instruments of control. So Barbara Amos Wilson is saying, look, when someone wants to control you, right, they just take control of your consciousness. You know, that's it. They take control of your consciousness. So he says consciousness of blacks, because it is shaped and utilized as an instrument of white power, exhibits a required restrictive range, shadowness of depth, an overriding level of emotional reactionariness. Remember, you all were just saying how instead of being proactive, we're just reactive, right?
Yep.
It says the underdevelopment, and remember earlier I said there are a lot of underdeveloped adults. The underdevelopment and underutilization or misdirected use of a variety of modes of thinking, reasoning, logic, and creativity in a limited breadth and depth of intra-group identity, mutual concern, love, loyalty, cohesiveness, and solidarity. All right, so that's white consciousness over black consciousness. All right, so black minds are really the instruments of white power when you think about it.
That's right, because the more that we think in a manner in which that they want to, it is conducive to them staying on top.
Right.
Absolutely. So on page 97, he goes on to say that the power, he said the power of whites as a group to dominate and exploit blacks as a group is primarily due to their manipulative inculcation in blacks the belief in the methodology of individualism, the belief that the pure, autonomous, detached, self-defined, self-centered individual who rejects all group identities and loyalties. So Dr. Amos Wilson, in a lot of his lecture, he talks about the myth of individualism. And he was saying that is what separates us. A lot of people are out for self. I mean, that it is what it is. A lot of us are out for self, and many of us are self-centered, and not self in the group sense, self in a personal sense. All right. So he says black powerlessness flows from these deliberately created and sustained psychic assault on black consciousness, perpetuated by social mechanisms of the white supremacist establishment. Goodness. So it says right here, oh my goodness, no amount of individual achievement or the gaining of personal acceptance by whites on the part of black individuals will remove them from the stigma of their membership in the powerless race. So no matter what you do,
you're still black.
You're still black. Remember on Jay-Z's song, OJ, he said, "I'm not black, I'm OJ." And he said, okay. But you know, you have members of our ethnic group, they want to remove themselves. They think when they've reached a certain level of success, whatever that is, it may be a financial success, it may be educational success, it may be a career, you know, then they think, okay, I'm accepted by whites, I've reached this level of success, let me now detach, right? But even if you detach, Dr. Amos Wilson is saying that stigma, right?
No, that's not
the stigma of what did he say? I want to make sure I don't misquote him.
Not a powerless race.
Yeah, he said that stigma will still follow you, right? No matter how much success you think you have.
That's right, because being an individual does not outweigh. No, it doesn't hold weight in the context of African liberation.
Absolutely.
Individualism. I mean, he goes on to say that the racially isolated African individual will learn too late that he cannot aid and abet the destruction of his former race without ultimately aiding and abetting his own personal destruction. So you can try to be a white person all you want, but you're still aiding and abetting in your own destruction as well as the destruction of your own people.
Exactly.
That's
Yeah,
it.
those are Negro minions. Once they finish using them as a tool,
right here.
they they want to come. They want to run back to us.
That's right. Like Michael
They're the ones that
Jackson.
they prop up.
Right. Exactly. It says that Black power will be, I'm on 98 family. Black power will be achieved and become a most potent power in the world to the degree that disempowering ideologies, propaganda, and social conditioning techniques employed by the white supremacist consciousness and the negative feelings and tendencies they actively invoke are compellingly refuted and neutralized by Blacks themselves.
Yes.
It's powerful.
So again, sis, it seems like we have to again take control of our consciousness.
Yes, it's our thinking. Yes.
And it's easily argued that that requires us to erect our own educational institutions.
Yes.
Because we got, I'm telling you that, you know, when I tell a lot of sisters and brothers, when we send our children into their schools to be educated, we got to understand they're doing more. When our children attend these schools, it's more than just information being disseminated, right? Or they're just learning skills to get it. No, they're being acculturated. A consciousness, you know, their consciousness is being molded and shaped by these middle-aged white women in the classroom. There are middle-aged white women in the classroom. But, you know, I read a statistic that said that 81% of American school teachers are white women between the ages of 30 and 39.
That's right.
These are the people who are in the classroom molding and shaping the consciousness of our babies.
That's right.
And so if we want to usher in a new consciousness, a new mentality, a new modes of thinking and creating and all of the things that Dr. Wilson speaks about, then we need to erect our own educational institutions.
That's right.
Yep.
But like Baba says, sis, we can only do that when we proudly accept who we are in reality. We have to accept who we are, accept ourselves as African people, and then we'll be willing to put ourselves in the mindset to say that, hey, I need to make sure that my child has an African-centered education. A lot of us aren't proud Africans. You know, we're like, well, I'm African American. You know, but you take that American off, it's like, now wait a minute.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Oh, I had.
We need institutions to re-educate the parents then first.
Exactly. Yes, the parents.
Yeah,
the parents are the control of teaching the babies.
Yeah.
They products to the same. They products to the same school system though.
Indeed.
You see what I'm saying? So you got school. You know what I mean? As far as you know, African people are concerned, the accommodating nature of us. You know, we did a lot of accommodating. You see what I'm saying? We're very accommodating people to everyone else. You see what I'm saying? We're very accommodated. You know, and you know, this is a systemic thing that stems from our family. You know, when we were talking about values earlier, our enemies value us so much that they control our families. You could have, you know, 3 or 4 children in the household, and everybody's in a different direction in the house. You see what I'm saying? So that influence on the dominant culture in the house have them chasing illusions. You see what I'm saying? They, you know, they hooked on technology. All of these things are artificial because in order to have a family, it has to be real. It has to be organic. You see what I'm saying? So now looking at these value systems and things, we're promoting and we're aiding and abetting, just like, you know, Amos was speaking, we're aiding and abetting in our own destruction. We're a party. We're an advocate for these devils that we allow to live in our homes, allowed to live in our minds, in our consciousness, our motives, means, and opportunity is there. We're continuously murdering the African psyche every day. You see what I'm saying? And giving life and birth to the American culture. You know, I could just use that. The American culture. You see what I'm saying? What it means. America has a history of death and devastation to African people, to all of the people on the planet. You understand? So it's contrary to that accommodation type of nature that we come in, and the spirit that we come in. It's completely contrary. So we're working in the inverse. You know, outwardly and inwardly we have a battle. You see what I'm saying? So, you know, with us being welcoming, us being accommodating, and us being hospitable, you know, the result of it was we were kidnapped. You see what I'm saying? And we were destroyed. You see? So when we start to look at this nature and their nature, this American system, this culture of war, death, devastation, and bloodshed, this is how we're interacting and interfacing with one another on a daily basis. You see what I'm saying? So this is what we're learning in school. This is, you know, what's coming from the food that we're eating and all of these things. You see what I'm saying? So our group consciousness is the destruction of the African. But we say we want to be liberated. We say we want to be free. You see what I'm saying? So we're killing an African every day inside of us. You see? So we're killing and suppressing and downplaying the African from within every day. And then we say we want liberation. We want these people. We want unity. We want to come together. Come together and do what? We come together when someone dies in our family. You see what I'm saying? So we have a long-standing culture of coming together after tragedy bringing us together. You see what I'm saying? What was done with these brothers and sisters with this hurricane relief, you see what I'm saying? But it has to take the tragedy every time for us to come together. That's not going to sustain us long term. That's going to cause us further trauma. You see what I'm saying? It's because we're coming together after loss. You see what I'm saying? We're not coming together out of love, because that's a spiritual component that's manifested in physical form. You see, so we have an enemy that doesn't know what love is because they devoid of that spirit. You see what I'm saying? They love what they own. You understand? So if we're in a situation where they own us, where they control us, we give them our children. They tell us with vaccines, all this stuff. You see what I'm saying? We fill our children up with all of this. We offer our children as a sacrifice. You understand what I'm saying? Wow. And then we say we love our children. You see, so we give them stuff instead of giving them us. We give them stuff, so they want things instead of wanting us. They really want us, but they take the gifts that we give them and say, okay, we're thinking that we can provide for our children and give them better than what we had. We're doing them a service. We're doing them a disservice by not creating situations where they can earn, where they can learn, where they can prosper and grow within that family dynamic. So they have an honor and a responsibility to that family. Most of our children is waiting to get 18 to get the hell out of the house. They want to get away from us. You see what I'm saying? Because they haven't been with us their whole life. They've been with everybody else. You see what I'm saying? So, you know, it's just like when you come home, right before you walk in the house, you might kick that dirt off of your feet because you don't bring outside into the house. You see, but you got a TV in there. You see what I'm saying? So you're bringing the outside into your house. You know, you might be watching the television programming, and then you and your mate get into an argument about some stuff you seen on TV. You see what I'm saying? Like, all of these things are shaping our consciousness, our group consciousness. You see what I'm saying? So the accommodating African in me respects the African in you. So your belief system might be different, your political ideology, but I respect and love the African more in you than our disagreement. You see what I'm saying? So I honor what you bring. I honor that you're able to bring it, and I value that. You see what I'm saying? So this is who we need to be to one another. You see? So as long as we're operating in that space, that's a foundational root type of strategy to love one another more than the outside forces dominating and capitalizing off of us not being together. So all of the nations around the world are benefiting from Africans here in America not being on one accord.
Indeed.
That's why we got prisons. That's why they got mental health facilities. That's why they got schools. That's why they got supermarkets controlled by all of these people that got nothing to do with our community, because we don't have that value system and love each other enough to do this thing for ourselves. And also, it's illegal for us to do it, by the way, in America. You see what I'm saying? Because all we're supposed to be here is workers. You see what I'm saying? Workers and consumers. You see what I'm saying? So when you deal with something consume, you say you consume something, you use it until it's no longer any use. It can't be reused. You see what I'm saying? So when we say consumer, you know, this is what we're saying as a consumer. You see what I'm saying? We're going to use something until it has no longer worth or value, and we discard it, we throw it away. That's what we have done with our identity. That's what we have done with our African consciousness. And then until we get to the point where we see that, we have that recognition. The first step in the healing process is to admit that you have a problem. And we have not come to the point where we have a problem. We don't have a problem with being in America. We don't have a problem with participating in the American culture, even though it's a culture that's contrary to who we are as African people. We are good with it. You see what I'm saying? And then we say, America brutalizes us and destroys us and kills our children, but we got an iPhone 10. Got an iPhone 10. I got a Maybach or whatever. I got things. You see what I'm saying? So the things replace the people. So until us as the people become more important than the things that we consume, then we'll get back on track. I know I went off on a little tangent. Forgive me.
But that's okay because
good information. Good information.
Brother Do the Knowledge always leads us into our next topic, whether he realized it or not, because that brings us right into the realization of African consciousness. What is he talking about? He's talking about us realizing our African self and implementing that within our children. Baba says on page 99, a sense of purpose organizes consciousness and motivates it to develop the required abilities and relations to achieve desired goals. The more intense its sense of purpose, the more is consciousness compelled to develop the mental and social faculties required to achieve its purpose of ends. The royal road to African power, to Black power, to powerful Black consciousness runs through the reclamation by African peoples of their African identity and their irresistible will to be the determiners of their own ultimate destiny. So in essence, our consciousness shapes what our destiny will be. Our consciousness shapes what it is that we in turn will do for ourselves. It shapes our purpose. And our purpose is what motivates us to achieve the goals that we need to achieve.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yes.
So sis, I don't know if we're going to get to chapter 5. I mean,
no, it's 9 o'clock.
Let's keep going.
Look at Mr. Saul. He ready.
No.
Winding down. We got to get the kids up in the morning, and
I gotta get up at 5 in the morning.
Yeah, so I'm kind of winding down. I mean, I probably could go for another hour, but I want to make sure that.
Oh man, I wanted to get into that ethnocentrism. Oh man.
Well, I didn't think we was going. I was thinking we would do an hour for one chapter, since it was only like 20 pages, for both of them, and then an hour for the next. But we got too deep into it, so.
That's right. Y'all got kids. Yeah, I understand that. The kids got to get up. You got things to do. I definitely understand, sister. I'm just messing with you.
No, we dig it kind of deep, but definitely I wanted to get into the self-concept because he said a lot of stuff. I'm telling you, throughout the chapter, I had like Meltrek right beside it. Like, yep, that's where Meltrek could. Yep. So he talks about the ethnocentrism, and on page 6 and 107, and one's ethnic group is the basis for holding oneself in high or positive self-esteem.
Mm-hmm. Can I say something?
What, Mr. Sar?
I think that this is a powerful chapter. By the way, it's probably one of my favorites. Is this chapter 2? What chapter is this, y'all?
The one where what we were just talking about.
What chapter is this? We're in chapter 5 or something like that.
We're chapter 4.
Oh, chapter 4. I don't know. Okay. All right. So yeah, I think it's powerful, and just looking at this part right here where he says this empowerment. This is page 98. The disempowerment of African consciousness occurred when it ceased to be African, to be African centered, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that sometimes we do things, and again, I always speak to the conscious community because I'm not, I can talk about people who don't call themselves or purport as being members of the conscious community, but that's not who I deal with personally. Now we have different people on different missions and all that type of thing, right? And there's nothing wrong with that. But personally, I talk to the people on a daily basis who purport to be members of that conscious community. And then I think we have to ask ourselves again, what is African-centered? Because to many of us, African-centered is just, it's a word, but we have to, what is African-centered? Just like I said, white supremacy, what is that? African-centered, again, is a theory, is a concept, is an idea, is a paradigm, and it has some root, it has a definition. It has a way that it's supposed to be applied, but we don't know these things. When we know that Afrocentricity or African-centered or African-centered thinking is a theoretical approach to approaching the world, so that means that we're looking through a certain lens, through a certain theory, looking at things from a certain vantage point, then we can better operate. Because now what my sister is saying, what's my sister? I'm sorry for saying my sister all the time. What's your name?
Alima?
Anima.
Which one?
Just Anima, one thing, and what you're saying, and what you said, you're right on. You were talking about the conscious community. I can hear it in you, right? You like the conscious community. Yes, me too. But the thing is, we think that, see, they haven't really looked at a lot of our scholars' works to realize that Afrocentricity or African-centered thought is a theory, and there are rules to practicing it. And everything we do and everything we say is not necessarily African-centered. Just because we put a cowrie shell or a unk on our neck doesn't mean that it's African-centered.
That's right.
So there's rules to being African-centered, as Dr. Amos Wilson is saying here. He's saying that it's an ideology. And ideology means there's rules to this thing. But we suggest that it can be anything.
That's right. I agree, brother.
Mm-hmm. So we off code.
We off code. So we have to really look at these things. You say off code?
Yeah, we off code. We don't follow the code.
Oh no, we don't follow the code, and we keep saying there's no code. I would say no, that's not true.
That's not true
we
at all.
keep saying we don't have a code of conduct. I can show you 1,000 of them. I can show you them dating from ancient Kemet all the way up to now, and you tell me we don't have a code. Not you, my sister. I'm saying when the community keeps saying we don't have a code. We don't have. Yeah,
the code. That's what keeps you in line and keeps you in sync. When you don't do things outside the code that can hurt, other members of your group and yourself.
That's right.
Absolutely.
But it's just our stuff is just willy-nilly.
Yeah, and that's when we can hear people say, "Oh, why y'all keep bringing that person down? Why y'all talking about that person? That person, he can do what he want to do. It's consensual things between two adults. But if you're said as African-centered, there's certain rules to being African-centered.
Yes, it is.
Right. Other than that, you're not African. You're not following the rules.
Because there's no punishment. There's no punishment for trading on or turning on black people. Actually, most, like the sister mentioned early on, Al Sharpton or other various leaders, the turn on black people are oftentimes rewarded by Europeans.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. And I ain't talking about Al Sharpton. I don't even have to go, because Al Sharpton didn't ever say he was African-centered. I'm talking about some people that I'm not going to name in the community. But what I'm saying is that we all know what we're talking about. We know there's all types of things going on. Everybody on this panel has been talking about materialism and how it's the enemy, but we got people out here flashing. Everybody out here now, African-centered mean that you're supposed to be committed to a woman if you're a man. Some people don't think that that's an appropriate situation.
That's right.
If you're Afrocentric, you say more than one woman because your rules and all that, but there has to be rules to this thing. It's not just because I'm horny.
Right.
That's true.
That's right.
You understand?
Right.
So, and there are rules to this thing. But what we do is we bring our Eurocentricity and cloak it in Afrocentricity.
Yep, I agree.
Right. And this topic, this chapter thus far has been apropos for that conversation. The evidence, there has to be evidence in consciousness. So if we're talking about approaching things from an African-centered, we're dealing with an African-centered consciousness. You see what I'm saying? So a state of awareness that will have you in a state of self-restraint, self-discipline. You would know those rules and adhere to those codes. We have abandoned those codes. You see what I'm saying? Like this book came out 20 years ago. You see what I'm saying? And I read it several times, cover to cover. And, and to think like we got this stuff we have these books for decoration and for show. You see what I'm saying? So we like, hey, I'm deep. I got these books on my shelf. You see what I'm saying? So the evidence has to come. If you're approaching things just like you were saying, Minister Asar, from an African-centered perspective, African-centered thought, or African-centered way of life, you have to provide the evidence. You see what I'm saying? So if you operating in a state of consciousness, African-centered consciousness, you have to be able to provide the evidence. You see what I'm saying? You have to be able to show and prove, show your work. You know what I'm saying? So,
and they're playing on the masses, because the masses, they say are the asses. They don't even understand that there's rules to these things. You just do what you want to do. That's what most of the people are following. I'm sorry, brother, but most of the people think that Afrocentricity means that you break all the rules because I've been in bondage from the church. So now this means freedom, and I freely do what I want to do.
No, it ain't gonna work like that. Absolutely, brother Saw. Absolutely.
I agree with everything you said, Minister.
What you laughing at, Dr. I saw you over there laughing.
I had to cut my camera off. Sister Alima, I had to cut my camera off and just burst out laughing because he said, you're supposed to be committed to a wife. I mean, just not, you're going around school and everything just because you're horny. Like, I had to just.
Well, what he's talking about, it reminds me of the way a lot of people view spirituality once they leave religion.
Right,
It's
absolutely.
like once they leave religion, all of a sudden, I don't have to follow any rules. I can do what I want. If I want to be gay, that's fine. You know, and when it comes to spirituality, it's just the same thing with African centeredness. It's rules to this.
Right.
You just do what you want to do. I mean, that's not the way it works. I find that when we start to come into consciousness, we are very lost. And the first thing that we think now is like, oh, I got freedom. So then everyone wants to just run around buck wild. But there's always going to be rules and codes and morals and ethics and guidelines and values to everything in order to make it succeed. So, yeah, I agree 100% with Brother Asaf.
And then, like the brothers were saying, there needs to be some type of system of accountability. So when you break these rules, and I know that Dr. Amos Wilson, I'm pretty sure in this text, he's going to get into a system of rewards and punishment. Right? There needs to be some sort of system.
To that also.
Right.
Yeah, some sort of system.
Dr. Bobby Wright speaks to that also. If y'all check out The Man and His Mission, you see what I'm saying? Like these types of behaviors should not be rewarded nor supported. You see what I'm saying? So if you got a brother who doesn't value his mother, he doesn't value his mother. You understand what I'm saying? A woman that don't look like his mother, he don't value his mother. So he don't value his entire, you know what I'm saying? So the woman who carried you in gestation is not good enough for you to have as a helpmate. You see what I'm saying? That's how far we have to get into the conversation. You see, we got to approach a lot of these ministers with questioning and asking those questions and saying, hey, what is this? So we can provide a functional definition. And once we agree on that functional definition, we can move forward. You see what I'm saying? Like, this will not be tolerated. You cannot be walking around, African, what is it, talking black and sleeping white? You understand what I'm saying? Like, that doesn't work. It's contrary to the goal. The African-centered way of life is the continuance of African-centered life. So anything that does not qualify, you see them. So now, once we have that collective consciousness or group consciousness, we're moving forward. We know what every thought, what every action, what every interaction is for the benefit of that goal. You see what I'm saying? And being the best possible ambassadors of that particular way of life. The levels of coming from into consciousness or into spirituality is like the stages of grief. Those stages. And we have to acknowledge that, because that's a part of dealing with loss. You see what I'm saying? So you lost something. You was connected to something. There's no book that I can read that's going to make me disrespect my mother and my grandmother. You understand? That's not a book I need. You see? So if I can tell you about, Marcus Garvey, and I can't tell you about my grandmama, I got a problem.
Exactly.
So these things for me started in my household. So the love of African people, the love of African culture, and being the best possible advocate for African life started with my mother and my father. My hero and my shiro. So now I could go in the community and find confirmation, not information. You see what I'm saying? So a lot of us haven't had that experience collectively. So we find our information with someone who's not credible to give us that information, because they're not living that particular way of life. They're talking about it. You see? So they're developing their relationship to that particular thing, but they haven't embodied it. So, a lot of these, groups that are going around, they were groups in the community that were separate unto themselves. Like, one of the worst things that happened is everybody came together in that regard. You see what I'm saying? So now you're looking at these people, and you meshing all these people together, but they've been growing and developing in their own particular tradition. The African in me respects the African in you. This is your way of life. This is what you connected to. This is what you're following, and it's making you a better person. More power to you. You see what I'm saying? Until it's when it's in contrast to African life, the continuance of African life, I got a serious problem with it. You see what I'm saying? And if it's damaging and if it's hurtful to our brothers and sisters, then it needs to go. You see what I'm saying? Absolutely. So, Dr. Bobby Wright was talking about that these people that commit these acts have no standing in place amongst us. You see what I'm saying? And they should not be allowed to come amongst us. And once we discover these people, whomever they are, regardless to social, economic status or whatever, they need to be removed from our situation. You know.
Yes.
And
Totally agree.
that's the best way I can paint the picture.
I agree. I agree.
All right, well, look, let's. I want to get ready to close out. We've been going strong for 2 hours, but I want every person on the panel, each person on the panel, to state, you know, who you are, where people can find you, and what you have going on. I know, due to Knowledge Radio, you were telling us before we went live that you're doing a dedication to, I think you said Kwame Ture, I believe. It's Kwame Ture.
Kwame Nkrumah. His birthday is on Thursday. Yes. So Sunday, thank you, Dr. Maya, for that. Sunday, 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Due to Knowledge Radio, we'll be doing a tribute to one of the greatest Pan-African minds of our time, that our beloved ancestor Kwame Nkrumah. So we want to invite the family on to be able to share their thoughts and ideas, and again, getting to like what Minister Asar was saying about defining terms. You see what I'm saying? Like, you know, we got people who are living alternative lifestyles claiming Pan-Africanism. How does that work? If it's for the goals, aims, objectives, and benefits, just so you know, we're going to be going through and reviewing some of that work and sharing his legacy. So we invite the family to come on. That phone number to call in to the 5-605-9360. And again, we're on 7 days a week, so you can catch us every day of the week on Due to Knowledge Radio.
What time, brother? What time? Eastern time? What Eastern, Central? What time?
Yeah, 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
Come to call in.
What's the number again?
Area code 515-605-9360. And I tag everybody in the flyer as well. I'm just waiting on the flyer to get done.
Okay.
We have to continue to pay homage and tribute to our ancestors, you know, known and unknown.
Indeed, I say.
Yes.
Okay, well, family, I'm Alima Njai, aka Lili La Poete, author of Perceptions of a Misplaced African, Volume 1. You can catch me on my webpage, www.lililapoetespeaks.com. That's LELELAPOETE speaks.com. And thank you guys for joining us.
Hold on, sis. I want to show I'm going to lock my panel and share my screen.
I don't know how to screen share. Let me learn how to do it.
Yeah, hold on. I'm doing it right now.
Okay.
Can you see my screen? Can everyone see my screen?
Yeah,
I found the book. I'm gonna have to read that. Yes, indeed. I did see that book on Amazon.
Yeah.
I'll definitely get to it. I'll definitely get to it.
Yes, it's a wonderful read. I actually have it, so I'm not saying that it's a wonderful read and don't have it. It's a wonderful read, and I do have it. And so, yeah, definitely support. It's available, on paperback and Kindle.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yes, it's a very, very good book. The sister goes in, and I think she's working on another book. Is that right, Sister Alima?
Yeah, I'm working on Volume 2, and I'm also working on a children's book. It's going to be a chapter book, though. I'm thinking about doing a little series, so I'm working on that too.
That's going to be hot. It's going to be hot. All right, so let me add this. Stop sharing and go back.
Well, next up.
Okay. Yeah, you're next up, Sister Camille.
Peace, family. I am Camille Gaynor-Jones. I am a musician. I'm a drummer by trade. I do lectures, clinics, all our African invention as far as music is concerned, from jazz, R&B, hip hop, rock and roll. And I'm in the process of writing 2 books. And I have a CD, Queens. So I'm from New York and from Jamaica, Queens. And, I just try to educate our youth through music and about all our great ancestors and the wonderful music beyond hip hop that we've created.
Absolutely.
So we can keep that going. It's very important that we keep our traditions going, especially our higher arts, which have been just, kind of most, we have our children thinking that jazz and all the other great music we created, that's white people's music.
No.
Yeah, so I work very in, keeping our people, you know, understanding the great things we've created. And just because you see in the media that they're, you know, propagating certain people playing our music does not mean, you know, that they are the inventors of it. So
Right.
I try to definitely educate, and that's what my, you know, 2 books will entail: Instructional Guide, and one is dealing with history and, you know, the music business itself.
Excellent, sis. I'm looking forward to that work.
Indeed.
Yeah, I'm also writing a blog too. It's about coonery back to the 1600s on up to today. You know, a lot of people don't recognize that, you know, a lot of people, just because people have money, they think that, you know, money trumps all. You know, no matter what they're feeding you, what garbage they're giving you, somebody seems like they're making a lot of money, we just follow it, you know. So just debunking all those kind of things as well. And on Facebook at Camille Gaynor Jones. Twitter, I'm the real Drumette. On Instagram, I'm just Drumette. And my website is www.camillegaynorjones.com. And I have a YouTube channel with a bunch of videos up of me doing teaching and clinics and, you know, live performance.
Excellent.
As well. Ashe.
Oh.
I'm grateful, you know, to have been asked to be a part of this wonderful group. Thank you, Dr. Maat.
Hey, thanks. Hey, Ashe, thank you for joining. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for joining us. And we're happy to have you, Sister Camille. Minister Asar.
Oh, I think he's muted.
Oh, he's not muted.
Oh, my microphone. I had it muted. I'm sorry. So I'm not that great at really promoting myself, but I'm the minister of the Temple of New African Thought here in Baltimore. We do a few things. We do what we're doing right here. We chop it up. You know what I mean?
Love the show, brother.
Okay, we do have a show. We thank you, brother. We on Conscious Black Business Network. Thank you. CBBN, Dennis Asar Winkler, ConsciousBlackBusiness.com. We do a few things. We heal from all different levels, mentally, spiritually, physically. We teach real estate investing. We teach martial arts, Tai Chi, karate. We have a mixed martial arts form called Montu Chi-Ru. We do quite a bit of things, but you can check us out at templeofnat.org. It probably will better explain than I can. Dr. Mike, can I share a flyer?
Yes, please do.
Okay, it just came off the press. I'm not sure if I really like it, but but you'll get the idea. Let me see, entire screen. Am I sharing, y'all?
Nope, not yet.
Now?
Nope.
No?
I still can't see anything.
Okay, let me hold up. I thought I saw a share. What about now?
Something is coming up.
All right. Okay. So let's go to what's this? Firefox. All right. So I know you probably can't see that, but on Saturday, October 21st, the Temple New African Thought, we will be hosting an event called Black Love Through Complementarity, an African-centered approach to healthy and effective male and female relationships. Y'all like that one, right? Male and female relationships. Yes. I heard some of that.
Yes.
I need some work, brother. I need some work.
So, you know, so we're going to have it, you know, at the Temple New African Thought. It's going to go from 9 to 12 p.m. Some of the things we're going to talk about, we're going to talk about resolving disputes, the power of forgiveness, family, mission planning, effective communication, what is love and what love got to do with it, our ancestral legacy, continuing the legacy. Also, the major thing is that we're talking about right now, we've been talking about is white oppression's effect on Black relationships. And these are relationships in general. So we're going to speak to white oppression's effect on Black relationships, and who can, and just to sum it all up, who can benefit from this workshop? Anybody, especially adults over 18, anyone who plans to get married, anyone who plans to be in a relationship, anyone in a relationship trying to strengthen their relationship, anyone can anyone can benefit. You can reach me at 443-333-2970. Again, 443-333-2970. Or you can just go to our website, templeofnat.org. All right. Peace and power.
How's your brother Asar? How's your brother Imhotep? I heard he just had a baby, man.
He had a baby probably last year around January. He and Sister Ife had a baby probably like January last year, I believe. I can't remember exactly, but yeah, not too long ago. Yeah, they're doing good. They had the naming ceremony and all that type of thing months ago. They're doing great. They just had a great Pan-African Solidarity Day, their 10th annual Pan-African Solidarity Day, doing big things.
Oh,
and
wow.
they opened their restaurant up, the Grub Factory here in Baltimore, vegan restaurant with a lot of good food.
I saw I saw them on Facebook. Somebody shared that on Facebook. I did see that. Yes.
I'm trying to unshare myself whole or let me see. Okay, I gotta go here.
Brother Tawola.
Oh, you
Brother
got it.
Tawola, Brother T. Brother T, are you there?
Hi, Dr. Maat and rest of the family. I definitely appreciate this this book club. Definitely get an opportunity to learn some things. You know, I'm a husband, a father. We're just trying to implement and rear my family. Make sure that we're doing all the great things to get our house in order. So this book by Dr. Amos Wilson is definitely helping. I love the first 5 chapters. I love this panel. Dr. Maat, definitely love your work, love what you do.
Appreciate it, bro.
Dr. Dennis, soon to be Dr. Dennis, minister. Definitely love your work. Appreciate what you do.
Thank you.
And everyone on this panel definitely doing a great job. And I appreciate the dialogue.
Likewise, bro.
Appreciate your presence.
Double day duties, so I was in between, in and out, but I'm definitely present.
Absolutely, and we all understand that. And I know how you are. You start juggling. You got the wife, you got the kids, and then So, but I appreciate your words, Brother T, and I appreciate your presence, and enjoying the club. And then also you've been promoting the Ram Book Club on Facebook a lot, like tagging people in things and encouraging folks to join. So I definitely, we definitely appreciate that. Definitely. I want to share my screen really fast. I know that we've been on past the time, but I want to share my screen really fast. Please support the Meltrek Project. In chapter 4, we talked about restoring the African consciousness. And we also talked about valuing our babies by adequately and effectively educating them. And so that starts by molding and shaping the consciousness of our children. And that's what the Meltrek Project is all about. It's about giving or creating and teaching our children or giving our children an African-centered consciousness. If you go to edanimeproductions.com and visit our shop, you'll see that we have a plethora of tools available. We currently have 2 films available, Meltrek Episode 1, Exploring Ancient Africa, and Meltrek Episode 2, Exploring the Pre-Columbian Americas. The objective of Meltrek Episode 1 is to teach our babies that the history of African people does not begin with the Ma'afe. It does not begin with the era of enslavement. It begins with the origin of humanity and civilization. And so we take them on a journey back to pre-diaspora Africa, and we teach them about, different kings and queens and different, civilizations. And so they see themselves, in a positive light, and they say, hey, we were Black people who ran things. We gave science to the world. We gave mathematics to the world. We gave architecture to the world, morality to the world, religion to the world. So they learn these sorts of things in Meltrek Episode 1. The objective of Meltrek Episode 2 is to teach children that there was an African presence in the Americas prior to Christopher Columbus. Now, I know a lot of brothers and sisters like to debate this topic, whether we were here or not. But let me add this caveat. We're not in Meltrek Episode 2 in any way saying that we are the Olmecs, Mayans, Aztecs, and Incas. What we do is teach children about these Aboriginal cultures, and we talk about people like Abu Bakr, people like Alonzo de Ilicus, who came over here prior to the transatlantic slave trade, or prior to the height of the transatlantic slave trade. And these were African people. Abu Bakr, but Malian scholars believe that he landed in Brazil somewhere around 1321, I believe. And Alonzo de Ilicus, I believe maybe during the 16th century or 15th century, he came over and he founded a province in Ecuador with 13 shipwrecked Africans. So anyway, we we talk about the African presence in the Americas. We teach the children about the Aboriginal cultures of the Americas in Meltrek episode 2. And so what we're doing with these films are essentially trying to do away with the myth of white superiority. Not only do we have films available, we also have a storybook that will be available in about 2 weeks. We have coloring activity books. And for parents who homeschool or would just like to get more in depth with the information, we have unit plans available. If you contact me personally, I'll be able to send you a link so you can download them. But we have unit plans available. You're looking at one of our unit plans entitled The African Origin of Mathematics. So each unit plan comes with 10 lessons. So you get 10 lessons. You also get a Meltrek learning packet. Did I lose my place? Oh, I think I lost my folder. So you get the unit plan, which consists of 10 days worth of lessons. You also get a Meltrek learning packet. All right. And then you also get a pre and post assessment. I'm looking for one right now to show you. And it's actually an online assessment that you take to gauge how well your child comprehended the material. All right, so we have lesson plans available, books available, films available. So tonight was very positive, or tonight kind of I don't want to say it confirms, but tonight we talked about transforming our consciousness and then giving our children an African-centered consciousness. So what I want to just say is that there are tools available to do so. Just visit edanimateproductions.com and support the Meltrek project. I don't have anything left to say, family. But see you next week. We'll be going over chapter 5. Sister Alima, do you want to throw chapter 6 in there? Because chapter 5 is kind of...
We're going to make this declaration, family, that we are going to do chapters 5 and 6 next week within the 2-hour span.
Okay. I'm trying to see. So chapter 6, I'm trying to see how many.
I think chapter 5 is about 8 pages and chapter 6 is 20 something, if I'm not mistaken. 25, 26. 26. So we should be able to do it. We just gotta limit the conversation. We'll be able to do it. But sometimes we just get carried away. I'm gonna get a little bell and start giving everybody 2 minutes bell at the 2-minute mark. Brother, what about knowledge? Y'all need one, and Minister saw he do too, because he can go.
What about the little timer? You remember with the games, you take the timer and you go, you put the timer on and watch all of the white stuff.
Yes.
Oh man. Okay, so next week, chapters 5 and 6. Okay, same time, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Thank you all for joining us tonight. Peace and power.
Peace and love.
Peace and Black power. Ashe.
Ashe.